right, so the goal of this number talk with students would be getting them to recognize that when we can make a 10, it makes our addition easier. So we can add more efficiently when we can use numbers to make a 10. So the first thing that you would want to gauge with your students is how comfortable are they with adding to 10. So I don't know if you think your group would need this, but when we get the groups made, we can think about that. The first thing you might want to do with your groups is just make sure that they all know that adding to 10 makes things easier and that they can do that in their head. So maybe going through this with them, 10 plus 5 is 15, 10 plus 3 is 13, and so on, and getting them to recognize that when we add 10 to a number, we're basically adding a 1 to the tens place. So 10 plus 5 becomes 15, which means that we take those 5 ones and we add that 1 to the tens place, that 1 10. So if they can recognize that, then adding with tens is really easy, and that'll make this number talk make sense. So we would get started maybe explaining to them, we're going to learn a strategy called making tens. We saw that adding 10 to something is easy, so let's see if we can look at these addition problems and see if we can make a 10 to make our addition easier. So now I'm going to start the model like as if I'm talking to kids. Okay, so I would say what I just said, and then I would go into the model. All right, so let's see if we can use our strategy of making tens with this number talk. The way this is going to work is I'm going to put a number on the problem on the board, and you're going to solve that problem mentally. Mentally means you're going to solve it in your head without writing anything down. When you have your answer, put a thumb in front of your chest. When I see that a lot of people have answers, I'm going to call on you guys to tell me your answers. After I call on you guys to tell me your answers, I'm then going to call people to explain their answers and how they got them. Okay, so let's start with our first problem. Our first problem is 8 plus 2. Put a thumb in front of your chest when you have your answer. Okay, got a lot of thumbs. All right, what are your answers? 10. Okay, a lot of people got 10. Excellent. Can I have Brandon to explain how you got 10? I got 10 because I started at 8 and then I added 2 to 8. How did you add 2? Did you go right to 10, or did you go add 10 to 2 like counting, or add 2 to 8 counting 9, 10 like that? Yeah, I did 2 jumps from 8 and then that got me to 10. Okay, good. Did anybody else get anything or do anything differently? No? Okay. So let's see. Most people, it looks like, got 10 by adding 2 to 8, and that was 2 jumps to 8, so that got 10. Excellent. Let's try the second problem. Put your thumb in front of your chest when you know the answer. The second problem is 8 plus 4 plus 2. And we already know that I want us to think about how we can maybe use this strategy of making tens to make this addition problem easier. Okay. All right, some kids in this might say, like, I added 8 and 4 first, and then added 2, blah, blah, blah. So you would draw out their thinking, like 8. Okay, so you added 8 plus 4 first, and then I would circle 8 on the number line. I would make 4 jumps up to 12, circle 12 on the number line. Okay. And then after you added 8 plus 4, that got you 12, and then you added 2 to the 12, and that got you 14. So someone's probably going to say that first, which ideally we want them to say they added 8 and 2 first. So after someone says that, then you would we would write their name down. Let's say this was Jacob. Let's say Jacob says this, then I might ask, did anybody do anything different? Let's say nobody says that they did anything different, which could totally happen. Then I might say, okay, well, I wonder, I know that adding 10 to numbers makes it really easy to do addition, so I wonder, knowing what I know about 8 plus 2, that 8 plus 2 is 10, could I use this somehow to make this problem easier? Okay, so then let's say I say that, and then let's say Brandon knows. All right, Brandon, what did you do? How did you think about this problem? Well, I added 8 plus 2 to get 10. Oh, Brandon, so interesting. So you first, instead of adding 8 plus 4, you decided to add 8 and 2 first. And I'm going to record Brandon's thinking over here, by putting the 8 and the 2 first, demonstrating the commutative property, and then grouping together the 8 and the 2 to show that he added those first. I did the same thing with Jacob. I grouped what he did first. Okay, Brandon, interesting. So you added the 8 and the 2 first. Why did you do that? Because 8 and 2 makes 10, and it's really easy to add numbers to 10. Okay, oh, really? So you know that if you can make a 10, it's going to be really easy to add that 4 to 10. Yeah, so then I added 4 to 10, and I knew that was 14 because I just had to change the 10's place to a 1. Interesting, Brandon. So you knew, this problem should not be visible yet, so you knew that 10 plus 4 was 14 because it's really easy to add numbers to 10, to add 10 to a number. Yeah. Okay, so you got 8 plus 2 was 10, you made your 10, and then you added 4 to that 10, and that got you 14. Interesting. All right. Very interesting. So once I've emphasized that we can make this problem easier by making a 10 and then adding the other number, then I'm going to go on to the next problem and put the next problem on the board. The next problem is, what I wanted to show, the next problem is 2 plus 3 plus 8. All right, put your thumb up when you have an answer. All right, how we gather answers. All right, let's say we have 13, we have 14. Okay. So now give me, let's hear your strategies. So I would call on a student to give me their strategy. I'm going to record whatever strategy that they put, but I'm hoping that somebody is going to say that they added 2 and 8 first. So let's say Marisabel says that. So Marisabel says, I added 2 and 8 first. Interesting, Marisabel. Why did you add 2 and 8 first? It looks like the 2 and the 3 come first. Why did you decide to add 2 and 8 first? So I'm hyper-emphasizing that she made that decision. Well, because that makes it 10, and it's really easy to add 10 to a number. Oh, okay, so when you add 2 and 8 first, so 2 plus 8, you knew that that was going to make a 10. And it's really easy to add 10 to a number. And so, Yahaya, when we add 10 and 3, what do we get? 13. Yeah, and that's really easy. I don't have to count all the way to 13. I just automatically know that that's going to be 13. Good. Because we just have to add our 1 to our 10's place. Excellent. All right, so now the kids have been introduced to the strategy. I'm actually going to go through 3 more problems with a different combination of 10 to kind of assess at how they're doing. So now I'm going to go to the next problems. We're going to start out with the same thing, like an easy 2-digit one, the 6 plus 4. Most kids are going to get 10. There doesn't need to be too much discussion on that, but that's just giving us a launching point for the other 2 problems. So then I would go on to the other 2 problems. I've chosen this problem because a lot of kids have trouble adding 9 to things. So here it's going to be a lot easier for them to make the 10 and then add the 9. If kids are adding 4, if kids are going in order, they're going to have to do a lot of counting on. And I want to use this problem to emphasize that making a 10 is a lot easier than counting on. So we'll do that problem, 4 plus 9 plus 6. And they are first going to, hopefully kids are going to recognize that we can use what we know about 6 plus 4 and make that quick 10. And then add 9. So the way I would record that would be I would circle the 4. I would write the kid's name. So let's say this is Caden. I would circle the 4, add 6 to it, get the 10, and then add 9 to that. And get the 19. And then the way that I would record that over here would be, once again, emphasizing the commutative property by changing the order of the 6 and the 9, and showing what's grouped first. And then if no one else said the other strategy, hopefully somebody does, but if no one, actually hopefully no one does, but if somebody does, or if no one does, I want to get that other strategy on the board. So let's say the other strategy is just adding in order. So let's say no one says it, and I'm going to say, well, what if you had a friend that said that they did this, that they added the 4 and the 9 first, and they counted 4, 5, and I would like hyper emphasize that this is really going to be long. They didn't know 4 plus 9, so they had to count. They went 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then they, so they did, oh no, they did 4 and the 9 first, and that got them 13. And then now they're going to add 13 and 6, but they don't know what 13 and 6 is, so they have to then count more by 6. Okay, so they did 13 and 6. They did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that got them to 9. And that got them to, or 19. What would you tell, what do we like better, Caden's strategy or this person's strategy, and why? Which one is easier? And then hopefully they're going to say that Caden's strategy is easier because it's really easy to add numbers to 10. And that's the point that we want to emphasize. So then once they do that, once that conversation's over, and re-emphasize that point, yeah, when we can make a 10, it makes our addition easier because it's really easy to add 10 to numbers. And then you would go in this last problem, which is kind of like you can view as like an assessment problem. And then you would do the same thing, recording their thinking. And then afterward, what did you learn about making 10s? Have a quick discussion on that. And hopefully kids need that key point that when we make a 10, it is easy to add numbers to 10. So we can search for 2 numbers that we can add to make a 10 first, and then add other numbers to our 10. All right, so that's it.